Throughout the 90s and 2000s, there was a popular trend of video games being made to coincide with the release of a popular movie. These games were seen as big bucks to developers, as they could ride the hype of an already popular franchise in order to boost sales and ensure their games flew off the shelf. However, because the time it takes to make a movie is so much shorter than the time it takes to make a video game, these games were often rushed by small groups of developers who were given little to no resources to make these games. These games eventually grew a reputation of being awful, even when compared to their often also awful films. So, I'm doing a series looking at these odd combinations. We'll look at the movie and the game to see how they fit together, or, more likely, how they don't. This is Movie Games.
Universal Studios has had quite the success in recent years in terms of animated movies. After acquiring Illumination Studios and DreamWorks, they've had a string of extremely successful animated series over the last decade. With all of their successes, though, it is surprising that Universal Animation Studios themselves only have 3 theatrical animated releases. The first was Curious George in 2006, their most recent was Woody Woodpecker in 2017, which barely even counts considering it only premiered theatrically in Brazil, and in between the two was a strange little film called The Tale of Despereaux. Based on the children's book about a brave mouse who wants to be a knight, this 2008 film received mixed reviews from critics, while making $87 million in the box office versus a $60 million budget. Over the years, the book has remained beloved, while the film has pretty much faded into obscurity. Its tie-in game, on the other hand, has been remembered ever since for how remarkably terrible it was. Released 2 weeks before the film on PlayStation 2, Nintendo Wii, Nintendo DS, and Microsoft Windows, The Tale of Despereaux video game is considered one of the worst tie-in games and also one of the worst video games of all time. In fact, this game is one of only 58 that IGN ever rated below a 2. And considering how lenient IGN is with their ratings, that's saying something. So, is this the worst combination of a movie and game I've ever seen? This is The Tale of Despereaux. The movie begins weird, as this is one of the only Universal movies I've ever seen where they don't play the Universal theme during the logo. I guess they just wanted as many people as possible to forget they made this movie. The film begins with some narration by Sigourney Weaver.
Rats hate the light. They're also terrified of people, which is why they slink and cower all the time. A rat can't talk.
Tell me that thing again, please.
Amazing. Every word of what you just said was wrong.
This is Roscuro, voiced by Dustin Hoffman, who's on his way with his friend Pietro to the Kingdom of Dor, which is famous for its amazing soup. Could be worse. You could be from a place famous for its watermelons.
Ooh, self-burn. Those are rare.
Roscuro and Pietro are heading to Dor for its famous soup day, where the king's chef will introduce that year's special soup.
In Dor, Christmas was nothing. Well, they still celebrated it, but it was nothing compared to Soup Day.
Forget the birth of our Savior and the forgiveness of sin. It's freaking soup, man!
Deep within the royal kitchens, a masterpiece was being created.
So the opposite of how this movie was made. So we see inside of the royal chef's kitchen, which looks like the place Willy Wonka apprenticed at. Seriously, how do I get a kitchen this cool? I will be fair to this movie, the majority of the time it is very well animated. The detail on these characters, especially the mice, is extremely impressive. However, there are certain moments where it looks like it could have used a little touching up, especially in this opening part. I have a theory about why that is, but I'll get back to that in a minute. Anyways, we see Chef Andre, voiced by Kevin Kline, is still trying to get the soup just right, so he goes off to get some, assistance, we'll say. I'm not sure if I'm on too many drugs or nowhere near enough. No take 2 on that one there? Seriously, he sounds like Christopher Walken from Country Bears.
Oh no! Oh no!
Anyways, eventually the two get the soup just right. Wait, if the vegetable man eats the vegetable soup, is that some form of cannibalism? And prepare to serve it to the king and his family. However, Roscuro falls into the queen's soup and startles her.
That while on first glance I might have...
A rat in my soup, and I ate it!
She's right!
Okay, why is nobody reacting to the fact that the rat in the soup is freaking talking? Roscuro escapes the guards into the series where he's found by Botticelli, the leader of the rats, voiced by Kieran Hines.
She's...
Blimey, she's dead.
Get him!
Wait, she's dead? Did she drown in the soup? Did they really just leave her face down in the soup that whole time and she freaking drowned? So the king decides to outlaw all soup and rats from the kingdom. Okay, first off, is there anywhere rats are considered legal? I mean, anytime you see one, you just immediately try and get rid of it. Second, how do you define soup enough in order to ban it? Is chili considered a soup? Is cereal considered a soup? Do we need food theory to get in on this one? So, 20 minutes into this movie, we finally meet our title character. And you'll notice from this point on, the animation quality is much better. It's also worth noting that this film did go through several different directors throughout production. This may explain why it feels like the opening 20 minutes of this film were added on after the movie was completed and they realized they needed to pad out the runtime to 90 minutes. It just feels like when I'm watching this that the movie doesn't really start until we get to this point. Anyways, this is our hero Despereaux, a small mouse who isn't afraid of anything, voiced by Matthew Broderick. And tell me if it isn't the slightest bit odd hearing Broderick's grown man voice come out of that tiny mouse.
Despereaux,
Yes?
you didn't cower.
Looks like a sword.
It's a carving knife.
It's beautiful.
Okay, there is a difference, movie, between being brave and being psychotic. If you were in school and a kid said a picture of a knife was beautiful, he'd be put in a freaking mental hospital. Meanwhile, we see Despereaux go to the entrance to the sewers to feed the rats. We then get to see Rat World, where all the rats live in darkness. However, Botticelli sees that Roscuro still hasn't embraced Rat World.
You're not eating.
I was.
No, you weren't.
Okay, so here's another problem I have with this movie. Here, it makes it seem like Roscuro hasn't eaten the trash since coming to Rat World, and Botticelli is just now noticing, suggesting it's been a few days, maybe a week or so since the soup incident. However, it showed Despereaux being born right around the same time of the incident, and that he remembers the incident.
Do you remember when they banished the rats?
Sure, yes.
Okay.
And he seems to be at least a few years old. In this movie, we never really get a good sense of the passage of time in this film, and that hurts the film in building up the stakes. When people talk about missing the soup or the way it was before, it hurts that we don't know how long things have been this way in order to empathize with them. Back in Mouse World, Despereaux's father sends him out with his brother to learn how to be scared like a mouse should be. His brother takes him to a library to eat books.
You're not supposed to read it.
What the casting director said about this script. Despereaux begins reading the book and learns about the knights and their code of honor. Despereaux eventually sees the princess and secretly follows her into her bedroom. Gosh, that sounds wrong! This is Princess P, played by Emma Watson.
You're sad
Yes,
because you have longing.
you're a strange little mouse.
And a talking mouse. Why is nobody in this world concerned about this? He tells her about the story he's been reading, and she, rather out of nowhere, tells him about how she misses how things used to be.
Oh, I wish it would rain. I wish there was soup again. I even wish there were rats.
I'm here to tell you right now, we don't care.
Let me tell you.
We don't care.
Despereaux promises to come back and tell her about the end of his story. Meanwhile, that night, he tells his brother about talking to her, and his family turns him into the Mouse Council. We are the mice who say nee! The council banished Despereaux and sentenced him to be sent to Rat World. They take him to the Threadmaster, played by Christopher Lloyd, in a very short scene, but one that I really like. It's weird, but the Threadmaster really seems to be the only mouse that's ever nice to Despereaux in this entire movie.
So, you're the brave one.
I guess.
It's good. It'll carry well down there.
It's just nice to finally see someone encouraging Despereaux instead of judging him all the time. Despereaux ends up being captured by the rats and thrown into their arena with a cat. Wait, did they just use Luke Skywalker's yell from the end of Empire Strikes Back? Roscuro steps in to save Despereaux, though, by saying he wants to eat him and takes him back to his home. The two strike up a friendship as Despereaux tells Roscuro about the stories he'd read. Meanwhile, we see the princess's servant girl Mig bring the princess her crown.
Glittery. I don't want it! Alright, Mig. Please, take it away.
So Mig literally takes it away as we see her putting it on and pretending she's the princess.
I'm a princess. I'm the princess.
Oh, okay, I get it. This character's freaking nuts. She gets caught, however, and is sent to serve food to the dungeon keeper.
And now I have to carry the sloppy, gloppy, stinky stew.
Wait a second. Soup is banned, but stew is alright? How does that make any sense? They're practically the same thing! By the way, there is some setup to the fact that the dungeon keeper is actually Mig's father. I'm barely talking about this as the movie barely talks about this. After hearing Despereaux's stories, Roscuro decides to go see the princess and apologize for what happened to her mother. However, the princess freaks out when she sees him and Roscuro has to flee from the guards. Alright, first, why does she freak out that way? It makes no sense considering she was just saying that she missed the rats. Second, why didn't Despereaux go with Roscoe? He could have vouched for him and made sure the princess didn't get scared and freak out. But hey, then we couldn't have Roscoe and May conspire to kill the princess. Because that makes a lot of sense.
And you should be wearing that crown.
I should be wearing a frown.
No. Not a frown. A crown.
You know, it says a lot about this character how used she is to listening to strange voices in her head. The weirdest thing is that throughout the whole murder part, the narration continues to try and make us feel sympathetic for this lunatic of a character.
Gregory always said that she had too much heart, and that's why they had to put some of it on the outside. In fact, you can have a good heart and not even know it.
So kids, if you want to have a good heart, kill people. So Meg and Roscoe take the princess to the dungeon as Despereaux hears her cries for help. I'm sure that wasn't hard. Despereaux finds the princess, who tells him to get help from her father. Despereaux goes to find the king and comes across a trap.
It's a trap!
Okay, seriously, who puts that many mouse traps on the opposite side of a mouse hole? Despereaux gets across the traps, but loses the princess's necklace. He finds the king, but he's so sad that he can't hear him, so he goes back to Mouse World and rings the town bell to get help. This somehow is heard by Chef Andre far away in his kitchen, and for no apparent reason convinces him to start making soup again right now. I would ask you to explain the movie, but honestly, I just want you to hurry up and be over.
You are a cute little mouse. Would you like some soup? No, I don't want...
Wait, the chef isn't concerned about having a mouse in his kitchen? Did he train under Linguini?
Talking mouse too?
Again, talking animals are just normal in this world? I thought Despereaux was the first mouse to ever talk to a human. Let's just get this over with. Soup Genie Baldo helps Despereaux go to save the princess, who they find is in the arena about to be eaten by the rats.
Because a single act of forgiveness can change everything.
No.
Wait, so he forgave her? Shouldn't it be the other way around? He is the reason she's about to be killed. Despereaux releases the cat, scaring the rats away, but gets captured by Botticelli. However, the sunlight returns just in time, and Roscoe uses the magnifying glass to bind Botticelli.
I am sorry.
I'm the one who should be sorry.
No, he should definitely be sorry. He tried to kill you! So the soup comes back, Roscoe returns to the sea, and Despereaux dies a very painful death. Not so lucky apparently. So that was the tale of Despereaux. How was it?
That was terrible! Horrendous! I'm offended! I'm appalled!
The animation looks nice at times, and the voice cast in this film is extremely impressive. But this movie's story is so jumbled and doesn't make any sense at all. I don't care about any of these characters, as nothing any of them do makes any sense or feels relatable at all. I'm glad Universal brought some good animation studios in eventually, because this just ain't it. Now for the video game. You should know that this game was developed by Brash Entertainment, a studio founded in 2007 that focused on licensed games. Between their founding in 2007 and their closure in November 2008, they released 5 movie licensed games. All of these games failed to make their money back and received overwhelmingly negative reviews. In fact, remember how I said earlier that Tale of Despereaux was one of only 58 games IGN ever rated below a 2? Well, Brash Entertainment's Alvin and the Chipmunk is also one of those 58 games. So of their 5 games that they released in less than 2 years that they were open, Brash Entertainment was actually able to produce 2 of the worst video games ever made, according to the leading video game publication. The game begins with what is actually a very nice cinematic, as it shows what the movie should have actually shown, Despereaux being brave. The game includes 16 levels, each beginning with a very nice looking drawing that sets up the level. The story begins again where the movie should have, with Despereaux being told he needs to learn how to be scared.
Again. Because he's trying to scare you. That's what a good big brother does. He's trying to teach you the joys of fear.
This game is a basic adventure platforming game where you play as Despereaux as you make your way through the levels by following a trail of cheese. To get across obstacles, Despereaux must jump, glide, climb, and sword fight his way to safety, throughout locations from the movie, such as the kitchen, the library, the castle, Mouse World, and even Rat World. None of the voice cast from the movie returned for this game, and I could not for the life of me find out who did the voices for the game. I will say, however, whoever decided to program in this annoying grunt each time Despereaux jumps needs a good punch in the face. That's right, this annoying sound plays every single time you jump in a platforming game. Someone please shoot me now.
I demand that you shoot me now!
The first couple levels show you the basics of the game, such as the controls and picking up the cheese. While this cheese appears to be a type of currency in this game, there's also buttons you can find in smashable items that are also used as currency. These two currencies are used together to buy upgrades for your attacks from Caravaggio, another very brave mouse, which kinda ruins the whole point of Despereaux being the only brave mouse, so it seems like the game cares as much about their story as the movie did. Occasionally throughout the game, Despereaux will just find random bowls of soup lying around, which will increase Despereaux's max health. There are also what they call rays of light, which are the only way to heal Despereaux's health, which you will need to do often in this game because the combat is terrible. Despereaux has a fast and a strong attack that will knock enemies back when you hit them, which is pretty normal in games like these. However, the knockback also happens when you get hit, and you can't do anything until you finish getting knocked back. By the time this happens, your enemy is already starting to swing again, which means they can just swing and swing and swing at you and drain your health until you are dead, because there is no block or defensive abilities other than to just run away. Real brave there, Despereaux. The story of the game follows a much more straightforward version of the movie as Despereaux meets the princess and gets banished to Rat World. He meets Roscoe, they become friends, and Roscoe ends up kidnapping the princess. So, through 10 of the 16 levels, I'm having a hard time seeing why this game was rated so low. Sure, it's no great game, heck, I wouldn't even say it's really all that good of a game at this point, but it's your basic platforming game that works fine. If anything, it's an average game, maybe 5 out of 10 or so. But then, I hit Chapter 11, and oh my gosh. From this point on, I see exactly why this game was rated so badly. This chapter has Despereaux climb a dark set of stairs to help save Princess P. And by dark, I mean ridiculously dark. You can hardly see where you're supposed to go, especially when you need to climb the side of the stairs. I was stuck on this particular part for over 20 minutes because I just could not see where I was supposed to go. Before this part, I didn't really need to follow the cheese because I could kind of tell where I needed to go. But from this point on, following the cheese is your only hope of getting through these levels. Also, before this point, the levels took between 10 and 15 minutes to complete. After this point, none of the remaining levels took more than 8 minutes to complete. All of this makes it feel like the final third of this game was really rushed together quickly, and they didn't really have time to really flush out the levels and make sure that they worked right. It also makes me think that the whole cheese guiding your path part was added in at the very end to excuse the fact it was hard to tell where to go in these final levels, and they made it a second currency to try and hide that fact. The final levels are 2 boss fights against the cat and Botticelli, which combined take less than 10 minutes to beat. These boss fights are so uninteresting and boring to play that halfway through I ended up playing them one-handed just to see if I could. And I could! So the game finally ends the same way the movie did.
And so, dear reader, you've completed the tale. Reached the point of happily ever after. The princess apologized to Roscoe.
I'm so sorry.
This is still backwards, as we close the book finally on Tale of Despereaux.
And just as in life itself, it's good to look back and remember how you got to wherever you are.
Well, I assure you, narrator, one thing I never want to look back on is this awful game. Like I said, the first couple hours weren't too bad, but man, those last 2 hours were some of the worst I have ever experienced playing video games. It's boring, repetitive, and frustrating as you see every system and mechanic the developers tried to put in place fall apart as they just don't fit together, especially in the rushed together final third of this game. I never read the book, but for such a beloved children's classic, I have a hard time believing that either this game or movie are an accurate representation of this story. Both seem to have potential at times, but just ran out of time in production, causing the story to feel jumbled together and certain parts to just drop the overall quality of both. No matter how brave of a mouse you may be, stay away from this pile of mouse droppings.
I'm Brandon Satterwhite for Idej Gaming. Thank you for watching.